Hey, Autumn.
Hi, John.
How you going?
Good. How are you?
Doing great, thanks.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you real good. So
Good.
we just do a roll and start. There's no cringe intro. You notice I didn't ask you for your bio beforehand. I don't do
Yes.
any of that crap because I hate all that crap when I go on other people's podcasts. I don't want to write a fucking bio. It's embarrassing.
I don't like to talk about myself that much, so I understand where you're coming from.
I can't say that I don't like to talk about myself. I do, but I also think it's stupid, and I'd rather just get on the call and chat to somebody.
Exactly.
Can you turn up your mic a little bit if it's possible? Just make it a little bit louder.
Sure. Let
It's
me
pretty good,
see.
but I just don't know if it'll come out okay when I'm recording.
Um,
You're from New York, right?
yes, I am.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to turn it up.
No worries.
There, how's that?
It's okay. I think it'll be all right anyway. I can fiddle around with it afterwards in Descript.
Okay.
So what I like to start out people asking people with is when was the first time you typed how to make money online into Google?
I actually never did.
What?
Nope.
Lies.
I never did. I became very frustrated
Hmm.
when I couldn't find a traditional job.
Okay.
And I had a conversation with a friend of mine. She said, "Well, what are you good at?" I've always been good at writing. I've always been even better at editing. She said, "Then why don't you just start an online writing business?" And I went, "I should, shouldn't I?" So I never actually typed in how to start a business online.
Well, if you never typed in how to do it, how did you figure it out?
Networking,
Hmm.
looking up people in the industry, um, and just making connections.
Did you, when you started out though, like, did you already know this kind of direct response, kind of online marketing stuff was there? Were you already on people's mailing lists or anything like that?
I wasn't on anybody's mailing list, but because of what I went to college for, I
Hmm.
was familiar with copywriting. So I already knew the fundamentals.
And what had you gone to college for?
So originally, I went to college for fine art. I was going to be a medical illustrator.
Hmm.
My life pivoted from there, and yeah, after a strange turn of events, I basically went to an academic advisor and said, "How many credits do I have? What degree can I get to get out of college? I'm done."
Hmm.
So the academic advisor, told me, "You can actually go with a double major, English literature and rhetoric." And I went, "All right." So I was actually a what they call a super senior. I spent 5 years in college instead of four, and ended up with a dual degree, English literature and rhetoric.
That's
So I
weird.
went, yeah, it's not where I wanted to go, but
Hmm.
it's what I did. And actually, it was interesting because my last year in college, I was headhunted by a government agency,
Hmm.
and I was offered a job right out of college. I didn't even have the chance to go to graduation because I graduated on a Friday and had to start work on a Monday. So it was one of those, like, it worked out. It was interesting. And again, what I went to college for and graduated with was not what my job was about. I ended up working for the Department of Defense as a mediator and arbitrator. So it's just these skills of how to be clear, concise, and compelling, which is all about what copywriting is, I've been practicing that my whole life without even realizing I was building a skill set.
This is awesome because the word rhetoric, which, for those of my audience who didn't go to college might not know this, but rhetoric is like old, like distinction between, like if you ever read any Greek and Roman stuff, which I did because I, spent my 4 years at college like partying too much and pretending to do a philosophy degree. And like rhetoric is often contrasted as the opposite. Like philosophy is about looking for the truth, and rhetoric is trying to present whatever you think or want people to believe as the truth. And rhetoric
Exactly.
is essentially what they were calling copywriting 2000 years ago. It's artful bullshit a lot of
Yeah,
the time.
exactly. And it's all about getting people on your side.
Yes. So yeah, you're perfectly suited to a career in marketing after getting a degree in rhetoric, which I've never ever heard of before.
It was completely random, and it was because I was done, I wanted to go to art school.
Mm-hmm.
I had a plan to get there, and it didn't work out. So I went, what did I take enough classes in? And the academic advisor just said, listen, you're going to get a dual degree. It's going to take you an extra year, but
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be done. It's like, okay, I can do this. I don't care.
So you went off to work for the government as a negotiator or arbitrator?
Arbitrator and mediator, yes.
And so that's like dealing with conflicts between individuals or between companies, or what was it?
Between individuals, yes. Between individuals in the military, as a matter of fact. So I was dealing with equal employment opportunity claims where people were being discriminated against by the military, soldier against soldier, basically. Like somebody wasn't getting paid enough, somebody wasn't being offered the same privileges as others,
Mm-hmm.
anything like that.
That's the kind of a job where I guess you might see like some truth in the old cliche that there's three different versions like of the story, like yours, mine, and the truth. How
Yes.
often was one person more on the side of truth, and how often did you find like there was bullshit from all sides?
Um, I'll say what I can say without breaking an NDA of any kind.
Yes.
Um, there was a person in a position of power
Mm-hmm.
who abused that power and used it against somebody with a lower rank, to the point that there were physical injuries inflicted upon this person.
Mm-hmm.
And the higher ranking officer was not even so much as reprimanded, even though there was physical proof that this other person sustained injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where I had to literally stab myself in the leg with a pen so I didn't become hot headed, and because I was overruled in what I was told I was going to do. This is what happened. This is how people are going to be reprimanded,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing you can do about it. So, a lot of times, like you said, there are three truths, and then there's the judgment call that's made by your superior, which is a whole nother truth.
So it's like this idea of being right doesn't guarantee justice. You can have all the facts on your side, and still, if it's not politically convenient, your story's forgotten.
Exactly. And you're paid to be quiet.
Okay. And you're quite an opinionated person, so I'm guessing you didn't last too long in that job.
As a matter of fact, I did not. 2 years.
Okay.
I was offered a 5-year contract,
Mm-hmm.
and I had, looked at permanent housing. I had looked just different things I needed to set up. And it took me a couple of weeks to decide, am I going to sign the contract for 5 years? And 2 or 3 days before I was going to sign it, I was told that there were massive government layoffs. And because I was the last one hired, I was the first one laid off.
Mm-hmm.
So they rescinded the contract, no big deal. But it was interesting in a way. It saved me from burning myself out. I would have lost years off my life doing that job permanently, all for the idea of a steady salary and cushy government benefits. So it was, and I'm actually glad I didn't sign the contract because they would have found a way out of it anyways. And I would have been stuck with signing a lease on an apartment and everything else.
Yeah. I had an interview lately with the guy who had a business in the supplement industry, and he kind of had, I think he had a similar like epiphany moment, not specifically around a contract, but about just going, he went camping for the weekend, and he sort of had this interest in music that he kind of let lie for too long, and he had this kind of spiritual moment. And he said he went home after the weekend and he just shut his business down pretty much overnight because he just realized he was away from where his values really lied, and he went in a completely different direction. So I get what you're saying about the way you can saying yes to something, even though it's seems convenient, all the numbers stack up. It's like, it don't fit you, it will burn you out.
Exactly. And there was no flexibility. There was no, I have been privileged being freelance that I've got to watch my niece and nephew grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was still at that job, I would not have that ability.
Yeah. So straight out of that, did you go into then? Actually, that was when you got into marketing at that point.
No. That's when I decided I had been blackballed by the government.
That's a cool thing to be able to say.
You know, it's one of those things where I I like I don't like conspiracies. Sometimes I can buy into them because I'm sure I have my own conspiracy. Um, I from 2009 to 2012 applied for every kind of job there was available. Over 300 applications, interviews, all denied, all rejected. So, in my infinite wisdom,
Was that private sector or public sector?
both.
Okay.
Yep. So, I decided to go get my master's degree because that will make me more employable. I'll be more educated. Oh, and that backfired in a huge way. In particular, one interview, and again, I had been on close to 300 interviews,
Mm-hmm.
and the hiring manager, the third round of interviews goes, you know, you're so great. You're great. But we just don't think you'd be a good fit here. So I was frustrated. And
Yeah.
it's one of those, we level with me. Be honest. What am I doing wrong? Is there a way I can improve my, don't you like the way I interview? Like, what's the problem here?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you have a master's degree. You work for the Department of Defense. We believe you're untrainable, that you will be stuck in certain ways and will not be flexible to adapt to our company culture. So it kind of hit me with like a ton of bricks where I go, yeah,
Were they saying like you were overeducated?
yes,
Okay.
yep. And so it was interesting to me because that's at the time I thought that's what you did. You went to
Yeah.
school, you got an education. I landed a too good to be true job, but it was true. And it basically made me unemployable. So around 2012, I said, that's it. I'll choose me. Nobody will hire me. I'll hire me. I know I'm a good employee. So that's how I ended up freelance.
So did you ever read that book, Choose Yourself?
No.
Well, you've already lived it, so you probably don't need to read it, but it's a good one.
Let, let me tell you a secret. I'm the editor who hates to read.
Oh, okay.
I I have, because of what I do,
Hmm.
specialize with copywriters. We like things concise. I can't read novels. I just I look at them and they go on and on and on. Just bottom line it for me. That's all I need is a couple of bullet points and I'm good to go.
Hmm.
I think the last book I made it through was called Unreasonable Hospitality. And I forced myself to read that because it taught me how to be a better business owner.
I've heard of that book. That's a famous book. What's it about? It's about a particular business, isn't it?
Yes, the restaurant industry.
Was it about a particular person or a particular business owner?
Yes, I can't remember who it was written by, but he went above and beyond. He went to, you can't just have good service and serve high quality food. You have to be
Hmm.
absolutely unreasonable with your standards and your hospitality.
Yes, because somebody was. It's so weird, this happens all the time. It's like I've heard somebody talking about this book within the last week or 10 days, and I'd never heard of it before.
Have you ever
Um,
seen the show The Bear?
no, I've heard about it. Is it something to do with cooking?
Yes, yes. It's about a chef who comes back from, being a Michelin star chef, comes
Hmm.
back to his hometown to run his family's restaurant.
Okay.
And the book is actually featured in the show.
Okay. Cool.
It's very good.
So, like, with writing and novels and reading, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I read a lot for work, um, have a lot of marketing books, and somebody at one point said like you should still read fiction. And I used to love reading fiction. I used to read so much fiction in my 20s, but then at a certain point, I kind of got more interested in stuff like that was going on in the world, and I started to feel like reading fiction was like just didn't enjoy it anymore. I wanted to find out more about things that were happening in the real world rather than in somebody else's fantasy world. And that kind of
Yes,
broke the spell, and I never really wanted to go back after that.
exactly. I like the idea that I live in reality. I don't live in fantasy, so I
Hmm.
can't read it.
Okay. And when you got in, so you like get into you start your own business, but like, and I know myself this experience the last couple of years that you like you said yourself you have to network your way into getting clients. Like there are online platforms and stuff, but how did you start to figure out like, hey, where can I get clients? How can I meet people in this industry?
So I just Facebook groups. It
Hmm.
sounds silly, but Facebook groups is where I networked and met people. And when I started out, I was a copywriter. It didn't sit well with me. And it's not that I had to do sleazy writing or um, talk people up that didn't really have any accolades,
Yeah.
but it was, I had to write from scratch. And after about 5 years, I couldn't do it anymore. I had all these questionnaires, I had everything down to a science,
Hmm.
but I still had to write it from scratch. So it was around 2000, sorry.
Can you dig into that? You still had to write it from scratch. Can you just talk a little bit about that? Why?
Sure. So it becomes for me a point where you're trying to come up with, you've got to write 25 headlines before you find a good one.
Yeah.
That to me is a waste of time. I know you have to flex your creativity, but even from there, I always questioned, did I write enough? Did I write too much? I would get too focused on details and not see the broader picture. And that would just frustrate me. And then I also discovered that it wasn't just me. I was working with clients who needed help in marketing and not just copywriting,
Yes.
who did not have an idea of who they were as a brand. So a combination of I can't do this writing, I hate writing from scratch, and just getting people who had no idea what their brand, who they were, what their brand stood for, things like that. So I was not only writing for them, I was helping them develop their identity, and that it was I in the government we have a saying, it's above or below my pay grade.
Sure.
So it's one of those things where I'm not getting paid enough to be your marketing person on top of this.
Yes.
So I had a conversation. At that time, I put the work and investment into hiring a business coach to help me branch out. So she said, "You're tired of writing from scratch. What do you like to do instead?" I love to edit copy. I like to make it even more persuasive than it already is. And I know how to do that because of the rhetoric I took in college. So she said, "You're an editor." And she goes, "Better yet, we're going to brand you because you're a self proclaimed grump. We're going to brand you the grumpy grammarian." And it was one of those where it fit perfectly because I don't have to pretend to be anybody I'm not.
Yeah. It's true. Tending to be somebody you're not is hard. And if you are grumpy, you might as well just let people know. Some people don't mind.
Exactly. And I'm not grumpy about grammar. I'm not grumpy. I go out of my way to break grammar rules. I'm grumpy about awkward social situations. I'm one of those people who randomly gets kissed by a stranger at the grocery store. And sometimes that gets a little annoying. There are days.
Um, so when you are now at this point, like said, I'm going to edit for clients. How do you find clients who are going to pay you for just editing instead of writing copy?
So this is where a couple of different skills from the government came in useful.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, I would look for people who hired copywriters, but the copywriters did a terrible job. And I would say, I can fix that for you, and I can guarantee you better conversions. And that's how I built my brand,
Okay.
fixing other copywriters' work.
So that's beat the control, essentially.
Yes, beat the
It's
control.
except it's just you're not going to actually you're not creating any new promos. So I get it now what you're saying about copywriting from scratch. Because when I thought you said copyright from scratch, I was thinking, well, I don't write copy from scratch. Like I always go and look what's out there when I'm writing something. Like I try to find, hey, what hooks are popular, what's out there, what are people saying, and sort of use that as my starting point, or what framework, if it's a specific format of copy, like there's usually a popular framework that kind of makes sense to put that message together. So I never
Mhm.
see it as from scratch, but from scratch then means kind of more like new offer, new promotion.
Yes.
Um,
So, and that's exactly what I like to do. Is I like to come in and I hate the word optimize, but that's essentially what I do. Is I optimize the copy
mhm.
so that it's more compelling.
Yes, and it's actually, well, that's become CRO for some reason, which was always like a kind of nerd topic this year, and it's just like this industry is so driven by fashion and trends. But I've noticed like so many people are talking about CRO in the last 12 months. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe because people are it's becoming more of a problem for people, maybe just because people's ad costs are going up, but it's become much more of a topic in the last 12 months than it was in the previous year.
Yes, it's a little. For me, it goes the same way I feel about AI.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is the beginning of the year, they were freaking out about losing their jobs. And it's kind of like, please chill out. AI does not write like a human. You can tell AI copy, at least I can, from somebody who's actually done research
Mm-hmm.
and written it from scratch. You can just spot the differences. And the biggest part is, even if you're a business owner and you're writing your own copy, it can't tell your stories. Only you can. So I did not see the necessity to freak out about it yet. It's
Yeah.
just not that good.
It's good for doing certain things. People have been, obviously lots of biz op sellers and info product sellers have been jumping on the bandwagon. It can do this, it can do that. You've just got to have the right mysterious secret prompt, which only I know. the
Yeah,
usual shit. And it's like I do use it, but it's I don't know. It's really good for collecting some information. It's good for helping with some ideas, or like, hey, like here's this thing. Can you give me 10 different variations on it? And it might give a good idea can pop up. But I mean, I used it quite a bit for a while, and like I'm like I should use it, but it's not all that. Most of the time, it's not my go-to thing. I'm like the first thing I'm going to go to is like what's out there. Like, what are people spending money on? Because that's going to tell you more.
exactly. It's great for research.
Mm-hmm.
There's one, Perplexity AI, that whenever I need research on something, that's where I go and ask it to
Mm-hmm.
pull all the relevant research. I don't ask it to, and I don't craft prompts. That is just, to me, it's a little bit more tedious than I like things to be,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you don't word it just right. And I mean, if I was still a copywriter back in the day, I probably would still be one if AI was around, because it can give you a terrible first draft. But because I'm an editor, I can make that draft better.
Yeah, it's useful for that. It's useful for getting away from the horror of a blank page for sure. And I absolutely do find that work gets done better in the edit than it does in the writing. Because I mean, I'm writing something at the moment. I started months ago. I've sent it to the client. It's come back. I've sent it. It's come back. They've tested it out. It hasn't quite worked. It's come back, and I've just finished rewriting the whole thing for the third time. And
Oh dear.
and like sometimes that's just how it is. But like the rewriting is definitely far easier than the first time you write. Like the second draft and the third draft is it goes a hell of a lot faster than the first.
Absolutely.
With all that, now what do you actually do like these days? Like what kind of companies do you work for? Because you mentioned like direct response, some of the sleazy stuff, and like uh, a lot of the stuff that's in our industry is not always the most edifying to work on as a writer. So what do you like to actually do? What sort of stuff do you work on?
So I right now, I have a constant thirst for knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know everything I can know, or everything I possibly could know. So I have the I have a client right now who I edit their video scripts. And it's fascinating for me because every script is something different, a different industry, a different topic. It Not only do I get to do what I do for a living,
Mm-hmm.
but I get to learn new things at the same time. So, video scripts, gosh, I've been optimizing video scripts now 2.5 years. So it just feeds my need for knowledge, while also learning different ways to pair video with writing. So it's fascinating.
Is that for YouTube content or is that for advertising or what kind of stuff?
Uh, Crowdsourcing, campaigns.
I've never heard of this. What is this?
Well, the company is called Rallion Media.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Portera,
Mm-hmm.
and they write. It's I think Kickstarter,
Yes.
but you
Ah,
pair
okay. Yes.
yes, but you pair the script with a video.
So they actually crowdsourced the script.
The company hires them, and they have the copywriter write the script, and then they also are a production company, so they also film the video. It's an entire campaign for crowdsourcing, and I believe it's technically called equity crowdfunding.
Ah, okay, okay. Yeah. So like people put their product up on something like Kickstarter and they try to get like 1,000 people to give them $100 to put together the seed money to create it, right?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
That's interesting because it's different stuff all the time. And it's a lot of time it's physical products and like innovative products for niche markets.
Yes, yes. There's always something new, always something interesting to not only learn, but to learn about the industry, the product, how they're changing the market, different companies all the time.
So the videos you work on go for like on these crowdfunding, like the campaign pages where they're actually trying to bring people in to give money to get a product developed.
Yes.
And okay, so let's just talk a little bit about that, like because that's it's not quite cold. I mean, people are going to those sites knowing that they're interested in new products, but what kinds of appeals are you like you see that are effective for getting people to actually be interested and invest in a product?
Well, again, it's all about good copy. So you have to pair a good script with good visuals. But again, it's just playing with how you're going to hook people, because you have to have a good intro or you're going to lose them.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the credibility, right? Who's backing them outside of private investors? What is their product about? Is it already in the market? Do they have something brand new that's not on the market? Are they a brand new industry? Different things like that. So it goes hand in hand with copywriting. It's just how to pull someone in to get them to invest.
And can you tell me about some of the campaigns you've worked on? Obviously, without like breaking anyone's privacy, but like what are some of the biggest and most successful campaigns? What do they look like?
They look like every industry, honestly. There's food industries, uh, cooking classes, there's medical devices, things that are in, third and fourth rounds of approval from the FDA. There are new construction materials, things that can be built with almost like a 3D printed house, but it's not plastic. It's concrete and other proprietary materials. So every script is different, every campaign is different, and it's just fascinating
Yeah,
to
that's super
see how
eclectic.
other people's minds work, how they come up with things, even different treatments for like everyday problems, eyesight problems, how they're fixing and inventing new ways to solve these problems.
When you come to a script to edit it for a copywriter, what things like are the giveaway tells where you think, okay, this person is not super experienced or they're a bit of a noob? What sort of stuff is giving the game away there?
Well, one of the good things is the company hires good writers.
Mm-hmm.
So having a good writer already helps. But being able to work with a writer, they're never new to the industry. So I'm already set up for success to help them. But some of the good ways, it's just looking at details that they might have overlooked. So a relevant statistic that might pull somebody in is always a good place to optimize copy. Social, it's not exactly social proof, but it adds to the credibility, right?
Mhm.
So anything that adds to the credibility. And another good place are looking at partnerships. Some of these companies already have relevant partnerships with other like universities and research facilities. So they're already set up again, where you just add in these little details to the script and it pulls people in.
When you look at the best writers you've worked with on the other side, what do you see that the best writers do that makes them stand out? Where when you see their work, you think, yeah, this person's hot, or this is going to work.
So I work with another person.
Mhm.
I actually trained her in copy editing, which is interesting. But I look at her from where we started a few years ago and where she is now in fractional. She's a fractional. I can't think of the other word, but she went from doing copywriting to coming in and helping our clients in other ways, funnels, different things like that. And I look at where she was, and then I see where she is now.
Mhm.
And it all comes with experience. But the more we go and we review her work, the less I see where I can optimize what she does. So I love that because the people that I've helped, they carry those skills with them. And I get to see them get better and better. And then move from, hey, I'm a copywriter to I'm a creative director now. And that I love to see that because when they master how to become a better editor, it expands their creativity. So I love to see that. To be like, hey, I helped you go from a 3-year copywriter to now we're 6 years in
Mhm.
and you're the head. You created your own marketing agency. Like, I'm so beyond proud.
Awesome. When you're talking to like a company, like an agency, or like one of the clients you work with, at at the outset, how do you help them see that there's a need for an editor in their process? Because a lot of times they'll think, oh, the copywriter will take care of this. And how do you let them make it clear to them that, hey, actually the copywriter isn't going to be enough. You need to have another pair of eyes on this.
So I look at it and I present it to them in a way that, first of all, they can understand. Because a lot of people are stuck on the idea that copy has to follow grammar rules. I
Mhm.
can't stand that. Um, so sometimes I'm doing a lot of hand holding with agencies, and I have to say, you need to break these grammar rules. You are not writing a college professor, you're not trying to be the next published author,
Mhm.
you don't work in the medical industry. Let's stop with all these outdated grammar rules that are just made up, by the way. They just came up with them in the 1700s and go, this is the Queen's English now. Learn it. So I have to hold their hand that way. But then I also have to step in and say, listen, I could be saving you time, money, energy. Every time you have to triple check a copywriter's work, you're taking away from your own time what you could be doing growing your business. Let me come in. Let me make sure your copywriters are following the rules, that everything's looked at for quality assurance, but also let me train them to be better copywriters. This is what I do. I'm an editor. I can train them to be better. It's going to make you even more money in the long run because people are going to see the stronger copy. They're going to feel it. They're going to go, yep, we want to work with this person. And then at the same time, I come in, and when I get really good, I can pair the copywriter with the project. I know what their strengths are. I know what their weaknesses are. I can pair them with a project they'll succeed at. So I have to, in a way, sell them on breaking grammar rules, but also sell them on streamlining their processes. And this is, I come in, I save you time, I make you more money, and I save you energy. And those are the three basics.
It sounds like this is actually becomes an issue where it like where copy's a bottleneck if someone's like got an agency that's growing or has to produce a high volume of work every month.
Exactly. And it's also where you see subpar copy come through because the copywriter might not see their own mistakes. So you as a business owner, agency owner, you have to be aware. You have to come in and look at it. And you're going to have content fatigue. You've read it so many times, you're blind to the errors yourself.
Yes.
So you need me to come in and hold everybody accountable.
When you're working with the copywriters themselves, for myself, I know this, I tend to be kind of a sensitive bunch. How do they deal with the criticism when you like send something back to them with the metaphorical red pen all over it?
Oh God, I don't have red pen syndrome. just a little bit. Just a little bit. But no, I work with a great bunch of people. I am fortunate enough to have been in this area for 11, almost 12 years now. And when I have a conversation with someone, also because of my mediation and arbitration skills, I happen to be able to catch a vibe. And it tells me how they're going to take my critique, my suggestions. And, I don't want to say it's about softening the language, but, I go into revisions with copywriters and I make sure that I try to compliment them before I say, hey, I see where you're going here. I like it. How can we make this more compelling in ways that the market will understand? So I'm always aware of the language I use so I don't come off harsh or like a red pen syndrome. I do not want to be your English teacher. I'm not going to nitpick you, but I want to make you aware of where you can improve. And thankfully, I work with people who take these suggestions very well.
Yes. It's hard. I just know from the perspective of writing, like it's hard to send something to somebody for them to review it, and then it comes back and it's like, oh, I've got to do this again. But it's incredibly necessary and valuable to do that too, because it's, you don't have enough distance from your own work to be able to see where it's fatally flawed.
Exactly. And I'm also the person when I edit, because there are not many people like me who have been a copywriter beforehand. So I know what they're going through. I know what they're thinking. So when I'm editing, I don't just say, hey, fix it. I give 2 or 3 suggestions and let them run with it. Because when I offer a suggestion, I don't want someone to just go, oh my God, I have to rewrite an entire paragraph. I give them what is missing or where it needs to be improved. So, where, for example, oftentimes hooks are the worst. You can't find a hook till you find it. So, if one of my clients is rewriting something, I will offer them 2 more suggestions for hooks. Here's a hook, play with it. It's just an idea, but let me give you a foundation to run with because this is not strong enough. Or if I feel it could benefit from some credibility, I'll look up the relevant statistics. It takes me, 2 or 3 minutes, but that 2 or 3 minutes of extra work helps the copywriter not feel overwhelmed and not like I'm targeting them for bad writing.
I've only come to really appreciate the importance of hooks this year more, because I've worked on a lot of stuff this year that was going on YouTube ads. And like YouTube is just the most ruthless environment. Like you've got 2 to 3 seconds to get somebody's interest or they're gone. And I know that's the case in everything, but in YouTube, like there's this graph on, people tell you that about newspaper headlines and about Facebook ads, but you can't see it. But on YouTube, there's this little graph that tells you like if you get it wrong, and if you get it right, it still goes. There's a little bit movement to the right. And the reason I just say that is like when you're doing work on a project, and it could be like the same offer going on for years, and it's like the story's being told multiple different ways. Where are you going to go to find an interesting angle if you're at the point where kind of it's an established product that's been around for a long time? How are you going to find something new to say about something that's been around for a long time?
That's a great question. How I do it is I always suggest that the writer, especially if it's an angle that you can't figure out, because it's inundated, the industry is flooded or whatever. It comes down to, I don't want to say finding the hook, but finding the differentiator. So for me, a lot of people's personal stories are the differentiator. So let's say you have another vegan, cruelty-free freaking eyeshadow or something. You're talking to the person who doesn't wear a whole lot of makeup. So forgive me for the terrible analogy here. But you could go to, there's hundreds of those brands. What makes you special? We have to find a way to sell it. Their personal story. Perhaps it's something that they thought of with their great grandmother before she passed away. And you go, there you go. It's a family product born out of a generational coming together. And you go, yep, that's how we're going to sell it. It's you and your great grandmother's idea, and you're carrying on her legacy. There you go. There's your angle. You're not selling eyeshadow at this point. You're selling a legacy. It's all about, for me, personal stories. If you can't find a good angle, get a personal story.
Yeah, I've found that, like, I mean, even today I was talking with a friend, and there's a project I've been working on, and it's in in e-commerce, and it's like it's been around for years. I think things get to the level where everything that you could say about the product itself has been said, and then you've got to go and find something that really has no connection to the product but is just interesting and find a way to bring it back.
Exactly. And I've always been a fan. They say in advertising that sex sells.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in marketing, stories sell. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Where do we go to next?
You're okay wherever you want to go.
You're the only person I know, because what you're doing and what you've after we've talked for the last 45 minutes is essentially what a copy chief does.
Yes.
And yet you're the only, because editor is a very well established job title, but like it's well established in publishing and maybe in other industries or but like inside of marketing, if you would just, why did you make the decision to call yourself an editor and not call yourself a copy chief or something along those lines?
So I specifically went with the idea of blending the idea that I was a copywriter and an editor,
Mm-hmm.
which is where I came up with copy editor. So I'm not a traditional copy editor, but I also didn't choose copy chief because I didn't feel like it brought in the idea that I was also a copywriter. This is where I've started. This is where I'm, headed. But I didn't feel that it did what I do justice. So I chose copy editor, again, just to blend the idea that I was a copywriter and transformed into an editor, that I've been where you are, I know your struggles, and I can help you. Copy chief just seems, I like the title, don't get me wrong, but it seems like an overinflated self of ego. Like, ooh, I'm the head. And it doesn't make you very personable when they think you are the big man on campus.
Okay. At this point you've come to now, like, because you said you started out in Facebook groups and I did too. Do you still like use kind of like social media as a client getting tool these days, or do you find that after a certain number of years in the industry, it's no longer needed?
So I'm one of those people who I try to reach out. I make a list, I see what's going on, I start random conversations just to get to know someone. My name gets passed around a lot. People, well, one of my clients calls me a not so secret because of how I started out. But I still find it useful to maintain some sense of Facebook group interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Just otherwise, I'm one of those people who I put my head down, I go to work, and I don't come up till I need to. So I can get a little bogged down in work and forget that I need to maintain relationships. So I feel it's necessary to still participate in groups.
Yeah, I've found of late that Facebook groups themselves aren't necessarily as active as they used to be, or that maybe I'm not as interested in being active in them. But I do find myself in groups that I'm like, somebody will invite me into a Telegram group or a WhatsApp group where there's a smaller group of people, and then interesting stuff comes out of that. But I've been very proactive about networking because I don't live in the United States and most of the industry is there. I think probably people in the United States maybe don't realize how US centric the marketing business is. Like it's right there. And if you're in the US, it's definitely that much easier to network offline because of things like events and all the conferences that go on throughout the year. But like I quickly realized I have to get to know people in the industry, and Facebook is my way to do that because I can't go to the US very easily.
Absolutely. I love the idea that there are so many conferences available in the United States. You can always go, you can always network. It's great. But for people like myself, um, traveling is not so easy.
Mm-hmm.
I have to plan in advance, make sure there's accommodations. It can be a whole thing. So, Facebook groups for me are a way to circumnavigate that whole, well, I can't fly to Tennessee this year, so we'll just network in this group here, and maybe next year I'll get to the conference.
No, it's true. It makes such a difference. If travel is not super easy, and I'm do this now, like I work with people and help people to use like online as a networking tool. And um because I think a lot of what you get on Facebook is people will just will send you a connection request and they'll send you some cheesy message where they ask you how's business or something, and you know you're blocking them 30 seconds later because like this is a doofus, this is somebody's appointment set. Uh,
Yes,
there's there's so much to be said for just taking the time to get to know people a little, and how much long-term value there is from that, how much good stuff comes from just starting a conversation.
exactly. And I'm also terrible about Facebook because, well, first of all, I don't hide who I am. I am
Mm-hmm.
who I am. But I get a lot of connections who go, we can't wait to learn from you. Facebook is not the place to learn about copy editing. That
Mm-hmm.
my Facebook page is not where you want to go to learn how to be an editor. You want to learn that, you're going to have to go somewhere else. You're going to have to find me on a different social media platform because my personal Facebook is my personal Facebook. You're going to get opinions and very little about copy editing,
Yeah.
even less about copywriting.
I find people say that I can't wait to learn from you, just as like I get that a lot too. And I think people are just sort of stuck for something to say and they want to say something vaguely nice, so they say that. But it's one of those things like it's like, how can I help or how can I add value? And it's like, oh God, no, I don't want to do your thinking for you. Can you please just have a conversation with me like you would be? And that's one of the things that I liked about your profile and that stood out. Your personality is like that you make a lot of jokes and you make a lot of really off-color jokes that are politically correct, and that's good because it lets you know who you're going to talk to will have a sense of humor too, right?
Exactly. And I'm a real person. I used to have this idea that I had to maintain an air of professional, just being a professional.
Yes.
And I hated that because who you're going to meet in public if you run into me is not what my business brand used to be. I used to be super professional, over the top, politically correct, sensitive, and absolutely it felt boring, no sense of humor. So eventually I kind of said, I can't live this way. If somebody meets me out in public, they're going to know my brand is fake, that I am just this overly sweet person. Oh, to hell I am. Like, who you meet is who I am. And I'm glad that I get to be that person in this day and age
Yeah,
where I don't have to hide or pretend or anything like that.
yeah, I think people are afraid more and more, and I get it if you work in a corporate environment where you say the wrong thing and somebody else decides they're offended and doesn't like it, and suddenly you can find yourself out of a job or blacklisted in an industry and all this kind of nonsense. But when you are independent and work for yourself, I think there's a lot to be said in favor of letting your personality out, because other people in you're not going to work with other corporate people in this type of industry. You're going to work with other people who are similar, who they want to be themselves or have their personality, bring their personality to work with.
Exactly. And I dabbled a little bit in public relations.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I have been all over and done all kinds of jobs. But I would never want someone to say, "Oh my God, you said that," and then use it against me and be like, "But that's not who you are." So I don't ever want to get caught up in one of those nightmares. You know who I am. I'm not going to hide who I am. And my personality will always match what you find online.
Mhm.
It's I will never get caught up in some sort of scandal like that. So if they I say if they try to come for me, they already know who I am. You're just bored now if you try to come for me. And please don't forget, I will take you to task over it. I don't play nice either. I
Yes.
don't have to.
Autumn, if people want to find you online, what's the best place to do it? Is it at your website? Is it at Facebook, or where should they connect with you?
Yeah, grumpygrammarian.com is
Mm-hmm.
my website, and all my social media handles are Grumpy Grammarian.
Cool. I will put those in the video description when I
Yes,
post this on YouTube.
TikTok and Instagram also.
Awesome. Any final thoughts before we wrap up for the evening?
I don't have any final thoughts actually, other than I had a great conversation. Thoroughly
Yes.
enjoyed myself.
Awesome. Thank you for coming to that. I'm going to stop the recording now.
Sure.